Good evening. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, August 6, 2019. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall in Council Chambers. May I please ask the Superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Balfonts.
Here.
Ms. Bondo. Ms. Figdor.
Here.
Ms. Davis. Ms. Morioni.
Here.
Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow. Mr. Nabanza. Mr. Norris.
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski. Mr. Samuntu.
Présent.
Mr. Abdirahman. And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Good evening again. The school board is happy to be back at work tonight after a July break. And of course, we have a relatively full agenda in front of us tonight. Just before this meeting, we held a workshop to discuss and consider the next steps for the Solarized Project, which is an initiative that was led by Portland students and is intended to power our school buildings using solar energy. There's a first read for the approval of an RFP for the Solarized work on tonight's agenda, and then we'll be voting on that on the next meeting on August 20th. And while the board did not meet during the month of July, of course, there's always a great deal of important work going on throughout the district. So I wanted to briefly highlight a couple of achievements that were reached since we last met in June. The board has reached a tentative agreement with the PEA unit, who represents our teachers. Of course, that's one of the most important responsibilities that the board has, is to engage in the contract negotiation. So that was obviously that's an important accomplishment. Multiple key administrative and district leadership positions have been filled, and those are also on tonight's agenda for board approval. And over the last few weeks, the board has been working with the superintendent to help shape his goals for the coming year, including the early planning for the FY21 budget development process. So obviously, it's never too early to get started with that work, which, like I said, is also one of the most important parts of our board responsibilities. The board has also been creating its own goals for the year with an expectation that we explore ways to continue growing as an efficient school board. I can say that I have a group of colleagues that we're all deeply engaged in the work that we're doing, and we're all excited for what's ahead. Having said all that, I'll pass it out. Today we have, next we have this report of the students, and tonight we have adult education report. So Mr. Axel Samantu, take it away, please.
Okay, good, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I hope you all enjoy the vacation season. The new school year always brings an opportunity to get a fresh start. On April 25th, the academic advisor of Portland Adult Education, Anya Hanson, the general manager of Great Portland Metro Buses, Greg Jordan, a Metro board member, a former student, and I meet to discuss to Portland adult education student transportation. The general manager of Metro proposed a couple of solutions to improve access. This recommendation depends upon to the implementation of a new electronic fare system this coming year to support more students and hopefully to help students to attend school during the cold winter. The next transportation meeting will be scheduled by academic advisor soon. At Portland Adult Education, we have had some recent events. Graduation of our Bridge to Healthcare class on July 25th. CNA courses at St. Joseph starts on June 24th and will end August 9. On June 27th, Portland Adult Education celebrated graduation in Merrill Auditorium. This was an exciting moment for our students and their family. During the graduation ceremony, 3 graduates give speech. Claudette Compire, Ahmed, and I, as the PAE student representative. My speech had 4 points. The first was to thank and to express our gratitude to PAE staff for all they did for us during our education. The second, to share my experience at PAE and let students know they should never give up. Third was to thank all students for their trust in voting for me during my campaign to be the first student representative of Portland Adult Education on school board. And the last message was to welcome new immigrants to the city of Portland because we should celebrate and embrace the newcomer. Portland Adult Education achieved the following outcome during 2019. 102 students complete high school diploma, high school credential, 43 ISET, formerly GED, and 53 high school diploma. 28 Portland Adult Education and New Manor Resource Center alumni earned place on the spring semester dean's list at Southern Maine Community College. At Portland Adult Education, July off a break for most class, and August is busy with students choosing their class for fall. We currently have over 200 intake plated in August. When school resumes for the fall semester on September 9, new students will bring new dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Axel. Appreciate it. Next, for the report of the superintendent, Mr. Botano has his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Samuntu, congratulations on a very nice feature on you in the Forecaster this summer.
Thank you.
It was very wonderful to read about all your accomplishments and all that you've accomplished in your time here. So I would like to welcome everyone to the first board meeting of 2019-20 school year. I hope that all the board members and public enjoyed the month of July without any board meetings. I'm proud to be starting my 4th year as superintendent in this great community. This afternoon, we completed day 2 of our administrative leadership retreat as we prepare for the 2019-20 school year. Today, we spent our time focused on our Portland Promise Equity Goal, and we were honored to have representatives from Maine Wabanaki Reach join us for part of this session. I would like to begin my comments at board meetings going forward by recognizing the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland, the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand. And I can't tell you how honored we are to have their children in our schools every day. As many of you know, the city of Portland received an influx of asylum seekers on the last week of the past school year. I've never been so proud to live and work in this community as I've seen it rally to welcome and help our newest neighbors transition into this community. Shortly after the asylum seekers arrived, I asked Grace Valenzuela, our Executive Director of Communications and Community Partnerships, to serve as the school district's point person in these efforts. Over the summer, under Grace's leadership, working alongside the district summer school team led by Gail Cressy, the district has provided summer school to nearly all of the more than 80 students that have spent their summer at the Expo. We were going to recognize our intake workers today because of the amazing work that they've done, but we are postponing that until the second meeting of August. So I'm going to hold those remarks talking about the remarkable work that they were asked to do and which is so important to us as we look to the start of the school year and to other school districts in Maine. And so I'm going to leave that for the 20th. I would like to recognize, as Chair Rodriguez said, the fact that we've hired a significant number of new leaders for the Portland Public Schools, and we are incredibly proud of this group of people that have joined the Portland Public Schools this summer in what has been an incredibly challenging and very productive hiring season, and I want to recognize the tremendous work that our HR department under Barb Stoddard have done to help us to execute on that. As a result, we are I'm going to start by introducing some of our non-represented positions that are here today. So these are folks that you as a board don't approve. These are just administrative acknowledgments. So let me start by introducing these fine individuals who have joined the Portland Public Schools. We have two people in our Office of Student Support Services, so our special education office, under the leadership of Deb Mullis, and that's Erin Bates-Latorno and Julie Kirby. So thank you, Erin and Julie, for joining the Portland Public Schools, and we look forward to working with you. And also Suzanne Chevalier, and I know I butchered your number. It was, okay, Chevalier, okay. I tried to do the Chevalier. Chevalier, yay! So, who's our new director of pre-kindergarten programs. And Sue has been with the district for a significant period of time, so she comes with tons of understanding of the school district and the work that we're trying to do in pre-K. So we're incredibly fortunate to have her transition from her teaching position at Reiki to take on this important role. So I don't know if any of you want to say anything to the board.
I'll just say thank you very much, and I look forward to this next year and many years to come in Portland.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. I'm exceedingly excited, both for me professionally, but also for the district and the city. I think we're going to do great things.
I as well am excited to serve the community and the students within Portland Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a number of our represented folks, so these are positions that you actually do have to vote on. So I know that, as I mentioned, we've had 2 days of retreat and long days, so I know that these folks are thrilled to be here, but also would probably be very happy to be able to go home at some point and not have to wait until the last item on the agenda. So if the board would consider moving this up for consideration now, I think that would be spectacular.
Okay, I'm getting a lot of nods across the table. So as the superintendent said, to respect the new staff members' time, we're moving the personnel items to this part of the agenda. Can I get a motion to take an agenda item out of order? Ms. Bondo, second by Mr. Balfans. Any board comments on the motion? Seeing none. Any board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. So, having said that, consideration and action to approve personnel items listed, election of administrators. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second by Ms. Morioni. Would the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yeah, as I mentioned, these are new additions to the Portland Public Schools. We're incredibly proud to welcome today Michael Daly, the new athletic director at Deering High School, Mr. Craig Hansen, the assistant principal at King Middle School, Carrie LeSueur, the new assistant principal at Riverton Elementary, and Angie Taylor, the new principal at Presumpscott Elementary. So I don't know, I think you guys should come on up and just say something to the board as well.
Craig Hansen, assistant principal at King Middle School. Want to take the opportunity to thank you all and Mr. Botana for your investment and your leadership. The last 2 days have been remarkable as a leadership team, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work with a phenomenal team that I've met so far. Thanks.
Carrie?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say that so far I've had the biggest, warmest welcome into the Portland Public Schools that I couldn't have possibly imagined, and I'm really looking forward to working with staff and students and the board over the next year and following years to come, so thank you.
Angie, your mic.
Hi, I'm short. Hi, I'm Angie Taylor, principal of Presumpscott School. I'm thrilled to be in Portland. I've already learned, well, I'm overwhelmed a little bit, but I've learned so much, and I'm so excited. And these last 2 days have been incredible, so thank you, and thank you for the vote.
Hi, good evening. I'm Michael Daly, the co-curricular athletic director at Deering. First, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. And I can tell you first and foremost, I cannot wait to join the Deering community. Very excited about that. Can't wait to get going. But I do want to tell you, coming from Boston and coming from a collegiate background, I am so impressed with your leaders in administration and with your students. I'm honored to be able to join this team, so thank you.
Glad to have you.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any, well, there's no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? Seeing none, I would say just real briefly, last week the board held a retreat, and one of the comments that was made was how much the board values having strong relationships with the leadership in the district, and how at times, because there's number one, turnover within board members, and of course so much on our plates that it's difficult to keep those relationships. But again, I just wanted to let these new administrators know that the board is really interested in having strong relationships with you, including you in our work, and making sure that we have open dialogue while you're part of Portland Public Schools. So welcome to the party. All those in favor of approving personnel items listed, election of administrators, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. Thank you. Should I get to the next one? I'm sorry.
Sorry, what do we have?
The probationary teachers.
We can do that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the superintendent.
Or, Barb, do you want to do that now, too? And be done with it? I'm sorry. Yeah. I hope that makes...
It's the next personnel item, so we'll just do it since we're on it. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, election of probationary teachers. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, second by Ms. Morioni. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Barb, can you do that, please? I don't have information for that item.
A little bit of an exodus there. So what you have in front of you is the first tranche of teacher hiring that we have had done since our last board meeting. These are all folks who are in the budget, and we're putting those forward for your approval.
Thank you, Barb. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, and there is no public comments on personal items. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, excuse me, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, election of probationary teachers, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. Back to the superintendent to conclude his report.
So last thing on my report is I want to take a moment to react to the Portland Press Herald article about our high school enrollment shifts. As I acknowledged in the article, I, along with the school administration and my central team, are concerned with the conditions that led to this enrollment shift and will work to put in place the structures that prevent that from reoccurring. The board has an important role to play, and I know from our conversations that you're concerned and are ready to do your part. But I want to take a moment to highlight what the article did not do. Our high schools offer learning experience second to none in Maine. Our students are fortunate to attend diverse schools that prepare them for living and leading in an increasingly diverse society. Research shows that students who attend diverse schools are more empathetic, more creative, and more engaged in civic life. Colleges recognize that, as evidenced by the class of 2019's more than $3 million in scholarships and grants and acceptance at some of our nation's top colleges and universities. We fully expect similar or greater successes from subsequent graduating classes and are determined that all of our schools will continue to provide learning environments conducive to such achievements. Deering specifically provides an outstanding education to almost 1,000 students year after year. Deering serves the most diverse high school student body in New England and north of Boston, and the school has been recognized for its efforts to expand advanced placement programming for all students. Deering also has the largest number of students of any high school in the region taking dual enrollment classes while they're in high school. Deering's talented students excel in arts and in the athletics, and this reality does not come through in the Press Herald article. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, report of the secretary. Excuse me. Consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 18th, 2019. Is there a motion? Mr. Balfans, second by Ms. Morioni. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of June 18, 2019, please indicate. All those opposed? Seeing none and abstaining from voting, you guys were not present. Good. So we had 4 in favor, then 2 abstaining. So maybe Ms. Morioni, Ms. Thompson, is there an issue with there being less than a quorum voting for this? Okay, so do we need them postpone this for the next meeting? Do we need to take a vote to postpone it? Or do we just?
No, you can't have a vote.
So we just, okay, so we'll have to postpone approving the minutes to the August 20th meeting for lack of a quorum to approve it. Not a big deal. Next on our agenda, the consent items. Will the superintendent please speak on the list of consent items?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district. As required by that policy, all of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. Our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude as well as for their tax purposes. I would like to thank the many generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value, and historical or commemorative significance. The beneficiaries and contributors for this meeting are Reiki Elementary School received a donation of food items for the food closet to support the school's efforts to eliminate food insecurity from Jennifer Hutchins of Mercy Hospital in Portland. Paths received a donation of wood for the woodworking program from Wayne Brazier of Otis Field, Maine. Casco Bay High School received a donation to the Casco Bay High School Quest program from James and Catherine Smith of Ponte Vedra, Florida. The Breathe program received a donation of notebooks and pens from Kyle Neugbauer of Old Orchard Beach. The District Summer School program received instructional supplies from Karen Cook. Ocean Avenue Elementary School received a donation from Dr. Will Burrow of Gray. Food Services received the following donations for their summer meals program raffle. A gift card from Cumberland County Federal Credit Union of Gray, 200 Sea Dog tickets from the Maine Credit Union League of Portland, 4 Sea Dog tickets from Town and Country Federal Credit Union of South Portland, 1 bowling party from Bayside Bowl, 5 observatory tickets from Greater Portland Landmark of Portland, and 2 gift cards from Mount Desert Island Ice Cream of Portland. We're very grateful for their generous support and contributions to the work of the Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, for the board focus on educational items, we have an update for the food fuels learning work. Superintendent, are you setting it up, or are we just having Mr.?
No, I am teeing them up.
Perfect. Superintendent will set us up.
2 years ago, the Cumberland County Food Security Council convened a task force to increase food security among PPS students. Last year, the Cumberland County Food Security Council presented the results of its year-long study of food security in the Portland Public Schools. The report, entitled Food Fuels Learning, was the first comprehensive look at the strengths and opportunities for improvement associated with the Portland Public Schools' efforts to ensure that we meet the nutritional needs of each and every student. The Cumberland County Food Security Council was a model for how to do this work. It recognized that the school district is a key player in bringing together stakeholders, but that the expertise, advocacy, and the resources exist in a variety of places, and that the work began with the report, but that it really never ends. Over the course of the year, the task force rebranded itself as Food Fuels Learning. It's formed work groups around each of its focus areas, and the partnership that started the work continues and works to enlist and grow the number of advocates and supporters doing this work. The Food Fuels Learning leadership team is here to update the board on the work that they've done and preview the work and to preview the work ahead. And I'm going to turn it over to them in a second. But I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to highlight the work that Jane McLucas, our District's Director of Food Services, has done. Jane has been a strong partner in this effort. To those who don't understand the Byzantine set of rules and regulations associated with state and federal food nutrition programs, it may seem that this collaboration is a no-brainer, but it isn't. Every great idea has to be evaluated against those rules and regulations, and every great idea has to identify funding sources and implementation and sustainability structures. She's been a true collaborator and advocate, and great things are happening as a result of this partnership, so I want to thank Jane. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Hanna to lead the presentation.
Hi, as Superintendent Botana said, my name is Jim Hanna. I direct the Cumberland County Food Security Council, and I have a slideshow, which when the projector comes on, I'll breeze through some slides. I will also introduce my team as we go through, and we'll talk about the various elements of the work that we've been doing. I'm actually standing in for Laura Robinson, who is disabled with a migraine this afternoon, so she was going to lead this presentation. So if I stumble, and actually we noticed both Chair Rodriguez and Superintendent Botano fumble over food fuels learning, which is our brand and our name, but everyone does it. So sounds good. It's a good branding strategy, but yeah, it's a tongue twister. Okay. All right. So 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we're beginning our third year on this project. A parent of a Reiki school student came to me and said, Jim, I've spoken to Superintendent Botano, and he thinks it's time to address food security in Portland Public Schools. I said, wow, really? I guess it is time, because we've been trying to do this and draw attention to this issue for a long time. So we spent a year kind of mapping out, looking at who our friends were doing this work in relation and partnership with the school, who the champions were within the schools, and we did a year-long assessment process, which we presented actually about a year ago at the August meeting. So that is what food fuels learning was and what the assessment was. I like to stop at this slide and just emphasize what it means to be doing this work in Portland Public Schools. 52% of the kids in Portland Public Schools qualify for free meals. That means in their family income, if they're a family of four, they're living on $32,000 or less. Again, that's over half the kids in Portland Public Schools. So I let that sink in a little bit, just to think, because I don't know how people can live in Portland on less than $32,000 a year, a family of four. And we know many of them are living in housing communities. We know many of folks are struggling economically. So, and obviously, being on the school board, you're familiar with this, but it always gives me pause. So essentially, what we've done is we've looked at the whole school food system, which is what makes our approach unique. Charitable food programs are fairly new to public schools around the country. That includes things like school food pantries, backpack programs, produce distributions are some of the ways that charitable food is distributed in Portland schools. The federal nutrition programs have the biggest impact and touch the most kids every day with their meals, which Jane McLucas leads in that. Breakfast, lunch, after-school programs, summer food program. School gardens have a huge impact on kids understanding where their food comes from, how food grows, what they put in their bodies, as does nutrition education, which we have a lot of partners that are bringing this into the schools externally, as well as a curriculum within the schools. And one of the things that group has done is looked at, well, I'll let you tell them what they're doing. And then sustainable food practices, which covers a broad range of things. We've had a lot of staff involvement with that, everything from scratch cooking to local food procurement to handling of food waste are things we've looked at in sustainable food practices. So I'm really proud of the leadership team that we have that's been meeting monthly that has been carrying out these goals. This is a summary of the goals. I'm not going to read all this stuff, but most of it is in the handouts. I think all these slides are in your handouts. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading a lot of text, just to inform you that this is all available for you to refer to and for your colleagues who aren't here tonight to refer to as well. This has been the timeline since we presented the assessment last year. We've had 2 quarterly meetings, and we'll have another one in September. I won't touch on all of it, but those are the main highlights. The groups meet monthly. We have a lot of active committees, a lot of engagement from staff, a lot of engagement from the community. And that's what we mean by the phase 2 and being in action right now and what we've done this past year. So our value statement is pretty straightforward. We believe all students have the right to nutritious food that allows them to attain their full potential. And we do this through comprehensive research and community-based action. So within our process, we've focused on building food security. That means food access for all the kids that need food and the families that need food. Also, we have engaged the community, so it's a community-led process. And we look at prioritizing sustainable systems change, which one of the things we found in the assessment process is that there are really powerful things that Portland Schools has done in the past, like have up to 38% local food. That is no longer the case because we did not institutionalize that. That's no longer a budget item. There have been many things where we managed our food waste better in the schools in the past, and that fell apart a little bit, so we're trying to bring that back. What we recognize is that we need to establish systems that maintain our progress. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our leadership team. I'll let them introduce themselves, but we have a really strong group of folks that lead the 5 focus areas. And I will begin with Heather McIntosh. These are some of the summaries, a summary of some of the achievements of the leadership team this year. We've actually developed a toolkit based on our assessment process, which is available to other school systems as well. We have a board member who's on a school board in RSU 16, I think, which is Buxton in Standish. So they want to look at this as well. Paul Penna is the superintendent there, former principal in Portland Schools. So we're looking at taking this beyond Portland Schools, but we're really focused on Portland and making sure it succeeds here and putting our energy into making it happen in Portland. But that's one of the things that we've been able to do in this process, is develop a template and best practices. So we've testified on relevant policies, and some of the policies that passed this past session are having an impact on Portland Schools' ability to feed kids. We've had a pretty sympathetic state government compared to the past 8 years in terms of taking care of school nutrition, so we're excited about the opportunities that creates as well. But at this point, I'm going to introduce the convener of the Charitable Food Programs, which is Heather McIntosh, who happens to also be the parent that I mentioned that got Superintendent Botana's attention to pay attention and convene this initiative. So Heather?
Thanks, Jim. And I would just like to say that Superintendent Botano is the 3rd superintendent that I spoke to about this, so thank you to him for actually making this a priority. So I chair Charitable Food Programs, and essentially we partner with the Locker Project. And I just want to take a moment to say that the Locker Project funds and manages all of the school pantries and does all of the produce distribution tables. So these are recommendations based on the assessment that through our collective process were identified as priorities. This again is in your handout. Essentially, the biggest impact that we've had this year is helping to bolster the Locker Project and support and influence policy changes with Good Shepherd Food Bank. So Good Shepherd Food Bank is the food bank that supplies the majority of food to the school system in Portland, and I would say the state of Maine. They have agreed to look at Portland as a district instead of by individual schools for eligibility. This change has allowed for all schools to be eligible for free produce and for reduced food items. So that's going to drastically increase the amount of food that is available for students. The other priority issue is that we have looked at developing a food fuels learning listserv for Portland Public School partnership so that more information can be shared internally, again, to create that sustainable structure so that if one person is removed from the equation, everything doesn't fall apart. And I would say that initially, the reason why we did the assessment was that there were lots of gaps and that people involved in the same work didn't even know who each other were. So a big part of what we're doing is to bring people together to create efficiencies and to work to feed all of the students in Portland Public Schools. So next up is Anna to talk to you about the next action group.
Oops. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Francischetti, and I'm the Food Fuels Learning Vista with both the Portland Public Schools and the Cumberland County Food Security Council. And I help to convene the Federal Nutrition Programs Action Group. So this year we have had a strong network of partners that we've worked with. Food Service Director Jane McLucas has been crucial to our work, along with other food service staff, food corps members, Full Plates, Full Potential, and a team of dedicated parents. So overall, the focus of our work has been to increase participation in the school meals program. And with this goal in mind, we have discussed a variety of topics, including but not limited to food quality, scratch cooking, menu development, marketing, and equipment. Additionally, Food Fuels Learning has added external capacity to support federal nutrition programs, as well as leveraging additional people and resources to support Portland Summer Meals Program. And based on the scope of federal nutrition programs, they have the most potential to impact the greatest number of students on a daily basis in Portland. And I'll turn it over to our next group, School Gardens.
Hi. My name is Lily Chaliff, and I convene the School Garden Action Group through my role at Cultivating Community as the Youth in Schools Program Coordinator. Garden-based education in schools is proven to increase students' physical and emotional well-being, improve behavior and learning results, as well as increase students' willingness to eat fruits and vegetables, which sets them up for healthier path and more success in every area of their life. In the action group this year, our biggest focus has been on recommendation 2 to build a district-wide school garden network. We have held monthly meetings for the past 10 months. Each meeting has been hosted by a different school garden program. And at these meetings, we prioritize connecting and learning about what each other are doing, as well as addressing the recommendations from the Food Fuels Learning Report. We've had over 65 people attending from 10 schools and school garden support organizations. We've created an active Facebook page to connect with the outward community, and we have an internal Google Drive that we're using to compile and share resources to improve all of our programs. We also celebrated 2 new school gardens being built in the district this year. One was a student-led initiative to build a greenhouse at Deering High, and the other one, we installed 10 raised garden beds and 2 fruit trees at the new Amanda C. Rose School. As a network, looking at the recommendations, we feel that integrating school garden programming into the district is the most important piece to sustainability. And so under recommendation 3, we have been working a lot on the school garden coach model, which we hope will be funded by the school budget in coming years. And this will address support to access and consistency to food-based education for all students. And lastly, exciting event that we have coming up at the end of August to celebrate our year. We will be hosting a Portland Public Schools School Garden Tour, which there's an invitation to in your packets. And we want to welcome all of you and the wider school community to these outdoor classrooms to share more about what's going on and celebrate all of the wonderful things happening in our school district. So now is nutrition education.
Good evening. My name is Christina Kololo. I work with the Cumberland County Food Security Council, the Somali Bantu Community Association, and I am fortunate to convene the Nutrition Education Action Group. And that group includes representation from Cultivating Community, Food Corps, the City of Portland's Obesity Prevention Program, including SNAP-Ed, Let's Go, and NEAT, as well as folks from Cooking Matters, FNEP, which is the University of Maine Cooperative Extension's nutrition program, and concerned parents and community members. So even after our 2018 assessment, there were a lot of big question marks around what nutrition education was in schools. And so over the last year, we've been focusing on creating a comprehensive nutrition education map. So that includes all of the content, curriculum, and activity that's going on in the district. And we've had 100% partner organization response rate and heard from 9 schools. And we're continuing to do targeted outreach for the remaining schools. We're really committed to getting feedback from each and every one. And we have $25 gift cards for as an incentive for respondents. So the map has been really crucial in identifying gaps, and we've been working really hard to address those. And so thanks to our interns, Esme Howland and Marianne Isaac, who are former Portland Public Schools students, they've been able to connect FNEP educators with principals and administrators at Deering and Casco Bay High. And so there will now be more nutrition education at those schools thanks to their great work. And the map has also allowed partner organizations to sit down and strategize over the best ways to provide nutrition education to all eligible elementary school students. So we've been making really great strides in reducing redundancies and overlap and really increasing the reach of service providers. Thank you. And next will be sustainable practices.
My name is Colleen Donlin. I'm a former Portland Public Schools student. I work at the Cumberland County Food Security Council, and I convene the Sustainable Practices Action Group. Our action group includes representation from We Compost It, the New England Environmental Finance Center, district facility staff, food corps, and green teams. Our main priority this year has been the cafeteria waste separation program. We've conducted site visits at each school and met with people involved in waste separation, including administrators, students, teachers, custodial staff, and food service staff. And we've asked about the barriers, challenges, and successes around composting and recycling, shared table practices, and the use of cafeteria materials. And we're now completing a best practices guide to incorporate that feedback and information into one place. And so we're hoping that the guide helps to educate and inform everyone in the school community and clarifies district-wide composting and recycling standards. We also hope to update the 2012 sustainability policy along with the guide. Back to Jim.
Whoa. I just got to say, we are on the ground everywhere. I just listening to these guys talk about this stuff, I'm amazed what we're doing. And I'm just really proud of this community and of this Portland Public School staff for the openness they've provided access to us at every level. It's been really important to me. I mean, the love of my life has been educator in Portland schools for 30 years, and I know how hard she works, and it's been a priority for me when we've walked into the schools to say, we are not going to ask teachers and administrators to do more. We're going to identify what the resources are in the community and bring those to the table. If we can figure out how to work smarter and not harder, we're going to do that. And we're going to just really make sure that everyone knows we need to take care of our kids and feed our kids. So I think that's been a value that I brought to this, and because we have some people that really want to push and make things happen. And I say, well, wait a minute, guys. Think about what's happening in the schools. Think about, what we're getting done. Let's just be really careful and respect and trust how hard folks are working. And let's make their jobs easier when we can and bring resources to the table when we can. So that's been the approach that we've taken. And so it's been 2 years, and now we're kind of ready to ask some stuff of you guys. So be prepared. We have a year to talk about this, but, we have 6 months, I guess, before you really got to have your budget together. But some of this stuff is going to cost money, and I think it matters to you. It's important to you. But I think, first of all, we wanted to see more of you guys at some of our events. We've been doing these quarterly meetings. Superintendent Botano comes to every one of our quarterly meetings. Our next one's at Riverton School, and that is on September 16th. Prior to that, there's a school garden tour that Lily is leading that's started in East End community and going around to the school gardens. So we'd love to see some of you on those days, August 25th and September 16th. Something else we've accomplished this year with the help of Kate Snyder and the foundation, let me see if I can get the new name right.
Foundation for
Portland Education.
Portland Public Schools.
Portland Public Schools.
Pretty
okay.
simple.
Yeah, right. That's new branding too. But we set up a food fund, so we've been able to begin soliciting donations specific to some of the things we're looking at making requests for. Some of the parents are really excited to draw attention to this. They want to buy Jane a new stove that was something that wasn't capacity that wasn't added when we built the new central kitchen, it was in Ron Adams' plans, but it was something that was cut at the last minute. It would make a huge difference, for example, in more scratch cooking. We have a wish list. We're not going to, I don't think is it in the documentation today? We have it. We'll share it with you. But parents really want to start raising money from the community to help pay for some of these things too. We also would like you to just draw attention to what we're doing with your networks. Let them know what we're up to. If you know people who care about kids being fed, let them know there's opportunities for them to get involved and to help. We also, something that's really important is encourage your kids, if they're in Portland schools, and their friends, to eat the meals, because the meals are good. And the school meals tend to have a bad reputation. Jane's working really hard to make them better. I don't think anyone mentioned that Jane is, and this is inspired by some very persistent parents, but there's going to be a vegan hot meal almost every day this coming school year. And we know that plant-based meals are the future, though I'm a little concerned that we want to make sure that the kids who are low income are going to eat those meals or eat something every day. We don't want to exclude them, so that we're going to monitor that carefully and make sure that that's a successful program and support it, market it. But please promote school meals to kids and families that are in Portland schools. Because the more money that's spent, if kids can afford to buy those meals, the more money there is in the budget to improve the quality of the food. And then we're looking at some positions. We've been trying to I wrote a grant to Thrive 2027 United Way, a position we called School Food Ambassador. It's kind of, we can call it anything we want, but essentially it adds capacity. It's kind of like a chef role in the kitchen, helps create efficiencies in the kitchen. We just heard from Samantha Gaspar, who's a chef who worked in Wyndham Schools and did some amazing things in 5 years there. And I learned a lot about the model that they had in terms of being able to, she spent 6 months observing processes in the kitchen, was able to create efficiencies in just terms of the way people walked around the kitchen and made it more efficient. They could do more scratch cooking. So that combined with new equipment, we want to make it easier for Jane. She's working really hard and she wants to do even better meals. So we want to create those efficiencies. Another thing we heard from Chef Sam, this meeting was just last week, they transitioned from bagged lettuce to shopping their own lettuce. They saved $9,000 a year. So what do we need to make that happen? I mean, and we know that's better for the kids, and it's fresher, and if we can get it local, even better. But I don't know if that will work. But anyway, the couple other things we've talked about in terms of increasing capacity in schools. This is Lily is championing school garden coaches. Each school has someone who champions the school gardens and plays an important role in making sure that the gardens are fully utilized. And then a little farther down the road, Javier's not going to want to hear me say this again because he doesn't even have a math coordinator or a science coordinator, but we're still talking about district wellness coordinator, which is a position that's been grant funded in the past, and it's hard to find the money for that. I think that could be a position to laments the school food ambassador, or whatever you want to call that position that increases the capacity in the kitchen for Jane. So these are some things, we're just putting some ideas out there. We're not saying you guys have to write the budget and put them in the budget right away, but it's a conversation I think we should have about the impact that just a few positions could really have on improving nutrition in the schools. Is this clock right? We're only at 20. Oh yeah, I guess we want to be done in 20 minutes. So questions?
Good. Do we have any questions? If not, I have, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Thompson.
I don't have any questions per se, but Jim, you hit it on the nose when you were saying all of the different tentacles that all of you have and the different businesses and organizations that you've been involved with. It's very, very impressive. I remember back at when my daughter, who's now turning 25, was at Longfellow School, and they tried to get in vegan food, or actually, I'm not very good at this, but there's another name for it. But they had, thank you. It's too late, I'm sorry. Vegetarian, they had like a popsicle sticks colored orange. And they had them pass them out. If they wanted to get a vegetarian meal, they turned in this popsicle stick. So I think it's kind of cool how far we've come with the gardens, et cetera, and all of the hard work. I have a question, though, in regards to, you talked about the wellness coordinator. Is there any interaction with our health teachers and how we could build some things into the curriculum? Because I know that totally off subject, but family living, for instance, that was incorporated in, and I'm wondering how much we've incorporated this topic into our health classes. So I'm not sure.
Well, this is what I've been learning. I mean, Javier reconvened kind of the wellness committee, and there's a wellness committee that supports wellness for the staff, and also another, I guess the same group looks at also staff for this, or wellness for the students. Jane McLucas co-convenes that with, I think, the assistant of HR, Richard, right?
HR, yeah.
HR, yeah. And so there are things happening. Anna Francischetti, who is on Avista on our staff and on Portland Public Schools, she works out of Central Kitchen, and she helps co-convene that. The wellness stuff that's been happening. I think there's an opportunity to do more. There are some representatives from the health teachers. We've been trying to get a handle on how much nutrition, because there are some basic requirements in the curriculum for nutrition education. I remember, talking to our staff who have been Portland students, our interns, and even my kids who went to Portland Public Schools, I think they got about 2 weeks of nutrition education in middle school, or another 2 weeks of nutrition education in high school during one semester of health in each of those levels. So I think that's the extent of it. And then the external nutrition education that's been coming into schools is mostly targeted to schools with high populations of low-income families.
Is there any tie to, and I haven't read anything recently, but I know that the Alphons were also, Justin Alphon in particular, was working on food insecurity, and they had an organization. Is there any any ties from your organization to his, and can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So Full Plates, Full Potential
Yes,
is the organization that Justin co-created. After they did the school food task force when he was in the legislature, so they have a report. They raise money, most of it through Portland restaurants and events, and then they support school nutrition throughout the state. They want to do more in Portland, and so we've written grants actually the last 2 summers to support summer food. So we saved food service $2,000 last summer that they would have spent on printing maps, because we got a grant to pay for the printing of that maps, for example. And then we re-upped that grant this year and did a similar thing. So they also invested in carts, I think, at Riverton School for breakfast. I think they are investing in the after-school program with Jane. So there's some things that we're not directly involved in, but Jane's been doing a pilot program this year on after-school, calling it a super snack. They've helped with some of the supplies to make that successful as well.
They only give grants for federal nutrition, so any emergency food, charitable food, so all of the other action groups or all of the other sort of priority issues that play into food security. Full Plates, Full Potential is wonderful, but they don't fund their So there leaves a lot of gaps for us and other organizations to sort of find funding for.
The other thing I should say about that is I think her title is Program Director, Anna Corson, comes to all of our Federal Nutrition Action Group meetings, so she's very involved, and so they're very present with what we're doing.
Thanks. Ms. Morioni?
This is my 11th year on the board, and I'm just blown away by the amount of work that you guys have done in 2 years. And really volunteering to do this work, correct? I mean,
Well, we didn't have any funding when Heather said Javier was open to this, and so we've written a few grants since then to help fund my organization's work on this, but really, yeah,
I'm just blown away, and I really appreciate all your hard work. It's so needed that we have a community group like yourselves that are taking this work on. I just wanted to say a quick anecdotal story. This past November before Thanksgiving break, I was meeting with an assistant principal at the time, and I said, "Oh, you must be so ready for the break. You must be really happy for having a few days off." And he looked at me and he said, "You know, it would be a really happy time, except have so many students at our school that if they have these long breaks, they won't be eating." So I've been on the board a long time, and all of a sudden I was thinking, how did we, not that we've missed it, but we haven't put it in my mind, I hadn't been thinking, these kids, these break, here we are off to celebrate, Thanksgiving, and they're not going to be fed. So things like that I really appreciate you shining the light on this. We have a lot of issues like that right now that we just need to be well aware of. Hit us over the head with it. Say, it's high time that we really commit to improvements in this area, because if they're not well fed, they're not going to learn, right? Obviously, which we all know that. So thank you so much for your hard work, and I made a note and highlighted all the stuff in your action column there, and I appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those comments. We appreciate your commitment and your support.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni, for articulating that, because it all comes down to making sure that our children are prepared to learn when they show up to school, and food insecurity is a big piece of that. I did have a question, I think, for Christina. As you're working to develop the comprehensive nutrition education map, do you have anything, and it sounds like it's ongoing, that doesn't sound, but you mentioned it's ongoing, do you have anything right now that could potentially be shared with the board, so we start to have an idea of how food nutrition education is being delivered, and maybe not necessarily start identifying the gaps, which I think is what your goal is, but for us to start familiarizing ourselves with what is being done?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a very large spreadsheet I can share with you.
That'd be good. I think that'd be really helpful. And then I think I have one more question and then just a comment. Heather, I think I wanted, if possible, you mentioned the change in the MOU between the is it the Food Shepherd?
Good Shepherd Food Bank.
Yeah, can you, because obviously that was a big change, and it improves our ability to address some of these needs. Can you talk about how that MOU change took place, and why it was so important to make that the distinction between school to district recognition?
So Catherine Sargent is now the executive director, and Katie Brown had been the prior executive director. And just a quick note, the Locker Project was born from a parent advocate as well that was bringing snacks into schools. So all of these organizations were founded of we need to do something immediately, emergency food. So Good Shepherd Food Bank had previously operated by a school-to-school model on eligibility, similarly to free and reduced food as far as the family income level. Now, essentially what happened, it made it very difficult for the Locker Project to do different ordering for different schools, to not be able to share free produce with one school. With one van, thankfully they now have two, their capacity was limited. And one thing that we identified and that Superintendent Botano and the board spoke to last year was that we really wanted a charitable food program at every school. So that's what we've been working towards. And the Good Shepherd Food Bank took some time to re-examine their policy, and they changed it. So they're looking at Portland as an entire district instead of school by school, so that we're now eligible for the free produce essentially when you order food from Good Shepherd Food Bank, you fall into different categories. So we get all the free produce, and then there are certain menu items that are just free. So it's usually like odd things that not everyone eats, but and then it also reduces the cost of ordering food, because the Locker Project pays for all of the food that goes in the pantries that isn't donated by individuals. So it's a significant reduction in cost. So again, it can increase their capacity to bring on more schools and creates greater efficiencies in their ability to distribute food to schools.
Excellent. So obviously a very significant change for them to look at the district as a whole. Perfect. Thank you so much. And then the last comment I wanted to say, I had to give a little bit of love to the School Garden Network. I am planning to attend the tour. I'm really excited. I know Lily has been working really hard to organize it with her team, and there's a lot of excitement behind it. And summer is where most of the action takes place in the gardens, and of course most of our students and families are not in the school buildings. So it's key time for us to go out there and see all the work that goes on during the year and how we benefit from it, in the thick of the season. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I'd like to add one more comment about that policy change with Good Shepherd, because, excuse me, I think I've been using it as an example of sometimes you look at policy happening in Washington or Augusta, but sometimes there's organizational policy that can make a huge difference. So they were looking at individual schools that had 40% eligibility or 50% eligibility. They would serve those individual schools. I wrote an email to the president, Good Shepherd, Kirsten Melly, and said, would you consider, since the whole district is 50%, that we could serve every school in Portland? It took them a few months, but they looked at it. They were a little nervous, and they haven't been publicizing it because they really don't know the full consequences of this policy change, but that's what instigated it at an institutional level, making that policy change. Now all Portland schools are eligible, and they lowered it from 50% eligibility to 40%. So I think it's going to have impact statewide, and it was just a simple ask. Once we understood what was happening, we understood the struggles that Catherine was having at the Locker Project and serving all of Portland schools. So sometimes it's just a simple decision that happens by some administrators that can make that kind of change.
Thank you for adding that. Ms. Bondo, you had a question?
I just have a quick question about the waste of the food, because I see, do we have any data or statistic how much, because we know that we really need to feed the kids so they can be able to learn. But if we have a lot of percentage of the waste of the food, that means something is not going well. So do we have an idea what we're giving to the kids and what we're wasting, what we've been putting on the trash?
So right now, our two Portland students who are summer interns are crunching all the data on food preferences. So this is something that Jane hasn't had the capacity to do. So we have files of what meals are served every day. So we're first trying to figure out what kids like and what we should serve more of. There have been some policies that are happening both at the federal level and at the state level around share tables and what can be put on a table to be shared as opposed to thrown in the trash, like an apple and things like that. So some of that's a little bit in transition. So we're trying to keep track of those policy changes and making sure that we waste less by using the right guidance, because sometimes we just misunderstand what those rules are and just tell kids to throw stuff in the trash because we're just out of safety and concern. So we haven't really measured. Do you want to say anything, Colleen, in terms of what your group is thinking, sustainable practices about food waste and measuring it?
Yeah, we haven't done any comprehensive measurement of waste. There have been a lot of different schools who have had Maine come in and do a waste audit where they go through the trash and see how much is food waste, how much is recycling that's in the trash, and all of that. But yeah, we haven't done any comprehensive research on how much food is wasted overall. Unless, Doug, you know any more about that?
Are you thinking of doing it? Because we can measure exactly, because while we're investing and while we try to bring some of the community to those gardens, we need to make sure that what we're giving to the kids, what we offer them is really going to give them more strength and energy to be able to be in the class, instead to be able to, I think if we helping us to try to create those kind of comprehensive measurement, how we can try to understand the value of what we giving to them and what we we've been wasting, so we can make sure that we investing to the right product, and then we can see the value behind that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we can even take the waste audits that we've done in the past and apply them to the whole district and see what we can find.
All right, thank you.
I agree, that's something that is important, and it's on the list.
Great. All right, well, thank you very much. I think I agree with what Ms. Moriani said. This is incredibly important work, and we're all excited to support it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of asks coming of us soon as we move into the action phase.
Yeah, and again, we're happy to discuss it as we learn what are the highest priorities. And we thank you so much for your attention to this and your concern, and thank you so much, Superintendent Patano.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim and the team. You guys are awesome and doing great work, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll move on, sorry. Old business, consideration and action to revise policy BCF, advisory committees and regulation BCFR. Is there a motion? And Ms. Moriani, second by Ms. Thompson. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there any board, I'm sorry, you guys, I'm so sorry, I completely went right over that. Yes, Ms. Moriani, do you mind speaking on the motion?
I just wanted to say a little bit about it, only because we hadn't,
I'm sorry.
since we had that break, I just want to remind fellow board members about what this is all about again. So this policy and procedure came about after, particularly when we were appointing community members to our Buildings for Our Future committees, and it was a realization that we had a process in place, but it really hadn't been codified by the board, and then looking at also ensuring that we are looking at the committee members that are on our committees, make sure that they're demographically representative of our community. That we have criteria in place specific to, so that there is very clear articulation of when someone applies to be on a committee, that it's very clear as to how the selection process would be working, and they would go to the appointments committee. And so this policy, we have not had this policy at all, and nor a procedure. So the appointments committee worked quite a few months to put this in print for your review. And I think this is really going to help, not only again for our Buildings for Our Future, our buildings committee, building committees, but also any committees moving forward. Yeah. So actually, if Ms. Thompson could speak to also, and also the open enrollment. Ms. Thompson was drawing my attention to that as well. In the policy and procedure, on the appointments committee, we talked, just so the board also knows, it was Ms. Bondo, Ms. Trevorrow, Ms. Thompson, and myself that worked on the appointments committee for this policy. And we talked about how it would be helpful to the community to know, to have certain times of the year that would be what we were calling open enrollment. And that would be also to alert the community that's the time to keep an eye out for applications would be requested for committee participation. So that also, I just want to draw your attention to that. And if Ms. Thompson wouldn't mind just speaking a little bit about how this, once we hopefully do support it, would be sort of the next need in terms of committee members. Thank you.
We had on the District Advisory Building Committee, we had a resignation back. It's been about 6 or 8 months now, and we've been waiting for this policy to get into place so we can put the applications back out for people to apply for that open position. It was a district-wide position, and now that we have some criteria set up, we're welcoming, hopefully, applicants to apply for that open spot. But we have several other things coming about, which is going to be discussed eventually by staff and hopefully from the building committee, is how right now we have the LICEF building level advisory committee. We have 3 more projects coming our way. And so there's going to be potentially a lot more engagement of those communities and how we appoint people to those committees. So it's really important that we get this policy. I think we listened. We had some challenges with this. I think when we did the appointments, and the appointments committee listened very closely to what everyone's feedback was, and it's been incorporated, whether it be demographics or where you live or representation. There were some concerns about at-large versus people that lived in the community. So I think you'll find in this policy and procedure, it encompasses all of those concerns that we had talked about when we were bringing forward names prior, and put a halt on that. And I think we're in a good place to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. So now, are there any questions on the motion? I just have one question, and you, Ms. Thompson, you kind of started to touch on it a moment ago in your explanation of the motion. So one of the shortfalls of the composition of task forces and committees that the board has had, at least through the time that I've been paying attention to board work, is that it hasn't necessarily been representative of the diverse community of Portland. And I know that I've heard conversations about trying to figure out ways when we put out applications or any other way that we can think of to really invite members of the community that historically have not taken place in these task forces and community, and engage these portions of the community in the board's work. So I was wondering how those conversations took place during the process to get this policy, and what in the policy itself can we point to that's going to help us address that. Sorry.
So I think it's highlighted even more in the procedure portion of the 2 documents, specifically under membership, and it talks about when the appointments committee is reviewing applications or recruiting new members, it lists the 3 what will be considered, and I completely agree with you, Chair Rodriguez, that that was definitely an area to make sure that in the language that we had in both the policy and procedure, that we address that concern. And I think also we'll continue to, in here it also talks about the ensuring that we're working with our communications coordinator to getting the information out into the community when it's time for requesting applications. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew that had been part of the work, so I wanted to make sure that we included it in our conversation tonight. Thank you. Is there any other questions? I know, Ms. Victor, I saw you were kind of hesitating.
I, at the appropriate time, want to make a couple of amendments.
Okay. We're going to make sure we have any other questions from the board. Seeing none. Is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, is there any board discussion? No, that will probably be where we just consider an amendment. Go ahead, Ms. Bondo, you have the mic.
There's going to be a delay in implementation.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Yeah, we'll make that correction.
And Ms. Victor?
Terrific. Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. I am very grateful to the work of the Appointments Committee. I know that putting these policies together took a lot of work, and I think that they will, once they are in place, represent a very important step forward in ensuring that we're putting together panels and committees that are more representative of our community and that better serve the purposes that we're creating them and the work that we're asking them to do. I spoke with Ms. Morione over the weekend about 3 very small changes that I'd like to propose. The first one is for consistency, and that is to specify that at a minimum, we will publicize any vacancies in January and September. So currently, we have the at a minimum language in BCF-R, but not in BCF. And I think it's important to certainly be consistent between the policies, but also to not constrict us or limit us to only filling vacancies in January or September. We should be able to fill vacancies if we so choose when we have vacancies. For instance, looking at the creation of 3 new building committees to help us work on the renovations of the 3 elementary schools. That schedule is likely, those committees we might want to establish in the winter. So I just want to ensure that this policy affords us the opportunity to do that. So that's the first change. The second change is under membership. The next 2 changes are both under membership.
Yeah, why don't we,
Okay.
yeah, just because this one might have some actual substance. I'll kind of clean it up. So Ms. Figdor has put on the floor a motion to amend the policy. Do you mind specifically telling, I know the superintendent made a note, but what paragraph is it that we need to add the, at a minimum verb? Is it in-
Second paragraph under membership.
Of BCFR or?
Just BCF, because I believe it's already in R, so it would be under BCF in that second paragraph under membership. After Appointments Committee, the first time it appears, say, at a minimum during the months of, so insert at a minimum, and then that goes with during the months of January and September.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? Ms. Morioni? I think are we all pretty clear on what the motion, what the change is, the amendment? Yeah, so is there any questions on the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any further board discussion? Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Ms. Figdor, for bringing that up. I think our intention and consistency was a good idea, because our intention was to not limit it to those time periods, but to encourage people to apply, to have their names available for whatever, and it doesn't have to be for a specific task at that time, but we wanted to leave it open times, so that way we could, again, put some push behind it, opposed to all of a sudden asking for this committee or that committee. So I think the at a minimum, I support, and again, our intention was to have it as open as possible, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, we'll put it on a vote. All those in favor of approving, or all those in favor of amending policy BCF to be consistent with BCFR and include at a minimum to the language in the second paragraph, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. All right, we're back to the main motion. I think Ms. Figdor had a second amendment she was going to propose.
Thank you. So maybe I can do these next 2 as one, because it's to the same section, which is policy BCF-R, section 1 membership. And then if you go down to the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, where we set the criteria that we're going to use to review applications, I have additions or changes to numbers 2 and 3. The first one is in number 2 to add gender. So we're specifying, and I would suggest that we add it after diversity. So we are specifying that we're looking for gender diversity in all of our panels. I think it's really critical, given the different perspectives that women and men have, that we look to have gender equity across our panels. So that is the first very simple addition. It would say a membership that reflects the schools and communities in terms of diversity. We would add gender, and then it also says ability and geography, including traditionally underrepresented groups needed to bring perspective and/or inform the work of the committee. I don't think that gender is now, that you can assume that gender is included in the policy, and I would definitely like to see it explicitly added. The second change is to number 3. And my thinking here is that I've been able to serve both as a community member and now as a board member on the district level advisory committee, overseeing the 4 school bond renovations. And from my perspective, one of the, there's lots of roles that the different committee members play. It's really critical to have the community's voice at the table. And it's also critically important to have expertise that we might not have in the Portland Public School system. So for instance, right now we have 2 architects on the district level advisory committee. One is a parent and one is a longtime community member. And we don't have an architect that's participating from the district staff. And that the skills and expertise that they bring is additive to what we have as a school district. And I think it's important that we seek out the very rich expertise that's in our community. Ideally, we're seeking out diverse and rich expertise. So you could imagine, having professionals that, in addition to just an architect, architects on this panel. So the change I would like to make is to specify that we are seeking to benefit from the expertise in the community, and it's just doing a little bit more pointedly that is currently in the text. So I'd like to, my proposal is to change number 3 to after educators, to say, as well as outside professional expertise directly relevant to the work of the panel or committee. And then we would delete and other professional or business representatives. So we are just specifying that we're looking for professional expertise that's directly relevant to the work of the committee. And that's a priority, on the level of looking for student and parent and educator voice.
Okay, so before we move forward, I'm sort of kind of going around the room to see if we really want to take these 2 together or if we want to separate them, because I sort of kind of am able to find a distinction between how they too would have a different impact on the policy. Ms. Thompson?
I just have a clarifying question, and I think these are all great changes, and I support them. But typically, we don't vote on procedures, so I'm wondering, because it's supposed to be done by staff, and actually we wrote the procedure behind the policy, so logistically and Robert's rules, I don't believe we're supposed to be voting on the procedures, but I think we can make amendments to it in the sense of friendly amendments and things of that nature, but procedures aren't supposed to be voted on by the board, typically, so
okay,
I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Okay. Good point. I would probably need someone else to chime in. I don't have anything. Yeah, I mean, does that mean that we're not able to take on the
under those circumstances, if the committee accepts those as friendly amendments, we just make those, and it doesn't need to go through a motion and approval process. So I guess the question is, does the committee accept it as a friendly amendment?
Okay.
I'm looking over at Ms. Bondo. She's given a thumbs up for both of those.
Yeah, because we did already on the school, the range of the backgrounds, and I think adding the expertise is...
It's fine.
Okay.
And Ms. Thompson says saying yes to, and Mr. Varr is not here, so I think it's thumbs up on Appointments Committee to add those amendments.
And we can do it as, like you said, like as a friendly amendment.
Yeah,
not a
that'd
vote.
be fine.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor, for your assistance.
Thank you to the committee, and thank you, Ms. Thompson, for clarifying what we could and couldn't do.
Excellent. All right, so does that bring us to voting on the main motion? We're back on the main motion. Is there any further board discussion on the main motion? Or on the motion, really? No. Then all those in favor of revising policy BCF advisory committees and regulation BCFR, please indicate. Yes, Ms. Thompson.
Sorry.
No, it's
In
okay.
the motion, it shouldn't have the BCFR. So we just need to amend the consideration and action to revise policy BCF advisory committee, because regulation BCFR, again, is not to be voted on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So we'll end that at committees. All right, so all those in favor of revising policy BCF advisory committees, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for clarifying that. Obviously, a couple of bumps there. Excellent. We're up to new business now. Taking consideration and action to ratify the recommendations of Harriman Associates as the project architect and engineering firm for the final phases of the Buildings for Our Futures project. Is there a motion? Ms. Bondo, second by Ms. Victor. Any questions? Actually, would the superintendent speak on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As part of the Buildings for Our Future bond, 4 PPS elementary schools are being renovated. Last summer, the board ratified the selection of an architect and engineering firm, Harriman, to design and develop construction documents for the Lyseth Elementary School project. Over the course of this past year, the project met timelines and now is under construction. This past winter, the board, based on a recommendation from staff and the District Building Advisory Committee, approved issuing a single RFP to select an architect and engineering firm to design and build specifications for the remaining 3 schools. The rationale behind this move is to leverage a single firm to look for sequencing opportunities and pursue other approaches to more efficiently and cost-effectively deliver on the remaining 3 projects, given the highly competitive construction market in the area. The RFP was issued this spring, consistent with city procurement processes, and the memorandum in your packet from Director of Facilities Stephen Stilfen outlines the process that was followed in reviewing and recommending the winning bid. It also outlines the immediate next steps around entering into a contract with the recommended firm, which is Harriman, and Mr. Stilfen and I would be happy to answer any of the questions that you might have about this. And let me just point out, it's not in my notes, but this is a ratification. I believe we went through this and that the board remembers this, but for purposes of the public, that under the city's procurement ordinance, board members do not sit on the committee, do not influence the decisions, and you are in essence ratifying my recommendation from the staff and Building Advisory Committee review of the RFP responses. So that's what we're actually asking you to do.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Thompson?
I just have a process question for the superintendent or from the operations director. After this vote here, do you foresee something coming back to the board or to the District Advisory Building Committee as a timeline on how next steps, now that we have the architect that we're currently using on Lyseth, and how you project that this might move along, since we want to get started on many projects at once?
So the next step will be entering into a contract with Harriman based on this, and then once we have the contract with Harriman, then we will convene the District Advisory Building Committee to begin to flesh out the sort of the next steps in that project. I also want to just take this opportunity to remind the board that one of the reasons that we're doing this combined architect and engineer is because we are interested in pursuing an alternative form of building, which is the contract management. So part of our next steps, once we are beginning this conversation, once we have Harriman in as the architect, is to begin a conversation at the state level about getting a waiver that would allow us to enter into contract management. And then if we are in contract management, that changes the next steps, because it basically will mean that we're planning this as a single project as opposed to having a conversation about, first we're going to do school A, and then, we're going to do a bid for a contractor to do that particular project. So the next step immediately is to begin those conversations at the state level. And, as you know, we've been working on that, have the documents in place, and are beginning that conversation with the appropriate people.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other board discussion? Ms. Victor?
I just wanted to say that I was really pleased to see that Harriman was selected by the committee, and that is what the superintendent, the firm that the superintendent is proposing that we move forward with or recommending. I was able to participate as a community member on the initial selection committee for the Lyseth project, and during that process, which clearly was for a different proposal, what I really appreciated was Harriman had the vision to use what is a relatively small amount of money to really transform our schools. And when I asked point blank, with this money, could you transform our schools into 21st century schools? They said yes. And we did not hear that from all of the other firms. And I think based on what we've seen with the Lyseth project, even though our budget has been constrained, I think the proof's in the pudding. I feel like we're moving forward with an exciting project at Lyseth. And so I'm really optimistic about what this means for the 3 remaining schools, and I want to thank our operations staff for getting us to this point, and I'm so excited to continue to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Any other board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of ratifying the recommendation of Harriman Associates as the project architect and engineering firm for the final phases of the buildings for a future project, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Thank you all. Next, we have our first read to approve the RFP for the Solarized Project. Thank you for everyone's engagement on the workshop earlier with that. And now, given that it's before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Mr. Balfan, second by Ms. Thompson. All those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. We're adjourned. Thank you.